Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we will present an introduction to the first Mishna Masechta Shabbos, which is on Daf Beis Amud Aleph. Let's begin. So this introduction consists of 4 different items. Number 1, the first thing is that in order for the malacha of Hitzah or Achnasa, carrying out from a Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah and carrying in from a Rosh Hashanah to the Rosh Hashanah, which is the malacha that our Mishnah speaks about. In order for this malacha to be a complete malacha, the person needs to do 3 things. Number 1, he needs to do an akira. He needs to lift up the item from the rishus it was previously in. Number 2, he needs to move it, transfer it to the next rishus. Number 3, he needs to do an hanacha. He needs to put it down into the new rishus. And only if all 3 of these are in place did the person perform the malacha of Eitzah or Achnasa, and he did a malacha on Shabbos, which is Asr Min HaTeira. If any one of these parts is missing, so for example, if the person lifted it up and brought it to the next rishus, but somebody else put it down, he has not done the malacha of Achnasa or Eitzah completely on his own, and there is no Isser Min HaTeira involved. The next part of this introduction is that when it comes to the Rishuyos of Shabbos, there are 2 Rishuyos that our Mishnah speaks about. Our Mishnah discusses a Rishus HaYachid and a Rishus HaRabim. And the reason our Mishnah speaks about only these 2 Rishuyos is because our Mishnah is presenting the Malacha of Eitzah, which is Asr Min HaTeira. And the Mishnah will speak about when the person transferred from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, or from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid, and at times when he didn't do the whole Malacha, and therefore there's no Isser Min HaTeira, only one Midrabanan. But our Mishnah is presenting the malacha min HaTeira if the person did the whole thing or didn't do the whole thing. And therefore, since we're speaking about the malacha, which is Asr Min HaTeira, we only speak about a Rosh Hashanah and a Rosh Hashanah, because only transferring between these 2 Rishuyos is an Asr Min HaTeira. However, there are an additional 2 Rishuyos, which are a Karmelis and a Mokim Ptur. However, over there's only either an Isser Midrabanan or no Isser whatsoever. These 2 Rishuyos are not presented in our Mishnah. However, they will be discussed later in the Gemara on our Mishnah. The third thing is that when it comes to Shabbos in general, and the Malacha of Eitzah as well, and a person took part in a Malacha, one of 3 things will be said about what the person did. Number 1 is either he is Chayev, number 2, Pater, and number 3, Mutter. And what those mean are as follows. Chayev refers to Chayev, the punishment of performing an Isser Min HaTeira. It's not talking about that the person did an Isser, it's referring to the punishment that he is liable for because he did an Isser Min HaTeira. So he's either chayev skila, karis, or a carbon chatas. If it was done b'mezid on purpose, he'll either have skila or karis, depending if all the conditions are in place for skila or not. Or if he did it b'shegeg by mistake, he'll be chayev to bring a carbon chatas. So chayev means that it's asr min HaTeira, and therefore he's chayev a punishment. So chayev refers to the punishment, which indicates there's an isr min HaTeira. Pater refers to the punishment. He's pater from a punishment. And therefore that generally implies he's pater from a punishment. However, there's an issue here, which is that it's asr midrabanan. There's no punishment since there's no isser teira, but there is an isser midrabanan. However, sometimes, and in our Mishnah this is the case, when it says pater, and it means pater from a punishment, the reason is not just he's pater from a punishment because there's no isser min HaTeira, there's actually no isser whatsoever. So we refer to the punishment, pater from a punishment, but it's not implying, however, there is an isser here, which is midrabanan, rather it's pater and mutter. And the third and final one is mutter, which means it's permitted. There's no problem for the person to do this whatsoever. So all 3 of these items, and also the 4th will fall into this, as we'll see in a moment, all 3 of these are referring to the malacha of Hitzah, the way it's Asr Min HaTeira, that the person had to do all 3 parts of the malacha, that the person transferred it between a Rosh Hashanah and a Rosh Hashanah, so that it should be Min HaTeira. And the third part was what we say to the person that did this. Either he's chayiv, and if it was only midrabanan, it's going to be pater, and if there's no issue at all, it'll be mutter. And the last and final thing is that when it comes to the malachas of Shabbos, there are avos and there are tuldas. And what's relevant here to know is that there is no difference between an av and a tulda as far as we're concerned. There are differences, but for our Gemara and for our learning now, what we need to know is that there are no differences between the avos and the tuldas. And if a person did an av, he'll get the same exact punishment if he did a tulda. There's no difference between the punishment and severity of doing the malachas. So an example of avis and tuldas is baking is an av, cooking, frying, and roasting are tuldas. However, there's no difference between all 4 of these actions. They're all accomplishing and doing the same thing, preparing a food. And for all of them, the person gets the same exact punishment. The only difference between an av and a tulda that's relevant to us here is that the avos were actually performed in the Mishkan, and therefore they're called avos, because the other ones are learned out of them. They're called Tuldas. They're born out of the ones that were done in the Mishkan. So baking was performed in the Mishkan, and from there we learn baking is Asr in Torah. And as a result, we also take out that cooking, frying, and roasting will also be Asr in Torah, since they're the same exact action as baking, and the person is accomplishing the same exact thing. So this is the introduction for our Mishnah.